All right, James. What is it? Greek lyrics, right? And what the hell is this?
I'm sorry.
The hell are you doing in class? The teacher would yell at you for that.
Yeah, I was reading this book and I was also listening to the Iliad and the Odyssey, and mentions of God with a capital G, and 5 of these 23 ancient minor poets reminded me that I heard that term pretty often in these numerous listens of the Odyssey and the Iliad. And some Christians might be familiar with some of these usages. A God-fearing man. Okay?
Oh no.
That's one. Okay. God has robbed him of his return. Well, that sounds like Moses in Exodus. Okay.
Wait, what are you trying to say?
Well, there was at a certain point in Exodus, Moses accuses God of being prepared to be cruel to his people. Okay. Okay. Leave the rest to God. How God sent omens of the wrath to come. May God punish them. God's wrath. Okay. If God shall destroy all this by my hand, God will give the victory to he will. I really do like this guy, Ketchum, the Bogey King, who chops men up into mincemeat. I think that guy sounds great. The destiny God spun for him. That's very similar to a word in Beowulf, after they've been adopted to the Christian.
Destiny spun. Isn't there the fates? Don't they spin?
Right, but
right.
Here you have destiny, the destiny God spun for him, which is contrary to what you see in other Greek poetry of the time, where even the chief of the gods is subject to the destinies spinning on their wheel. No one but very God. By the grace of God, what comes from God, none can avoid. Inquire the will of God. God forbid. I've heard that quite a few times as a Catholic boy.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, me too.
Suppose there really is a God in heaven. So you even have an atheistic notion.
Oh.
Okay? Affront of brazen sky. I really like that. May God best them before they do any harm. Okay? Brought by God to this very door. And there is a lot. God has planted all manner of songs in my mind. Okay? God has crowned his words by God's decree and their own wicked deeds. So that's about them suffering the wrath of God. The wrath of God is very common in this ancient Greek poetry. The inscrutable will of God. And that's just a smattering of it. If I've got 2 more pages of lists back here: God's will, the wrath of God.
Well, good thing that's not a library book.
One thing, hallelujah or alleluia, this is typically what women would say in a group after somebody said a prayer. This is stuff that you still hear in church.
Right.
Okay? And this is pre-Christian.
Are you trying to say that the Christianity is actually coming from something before? Is influenced by a religion before? No, you know.
God gave us what we wanted.
And
God walks with him
and more just
to see he gets there wrong, or God made him do it. Well, actually, usually Christians attribute that to the other guy.
Right.
But no, I'm just, once you start putting it all together, you'll find a higher density of these types of things than you'll do in many passages of the Old Testament. And this was written in the same language that most of the New Testament was written in.
Aramaic, right.
Okay.
Well,
Aramaic was an Aryan language, and so one of the Gospels written in Aramaic. The other 3 were written in Greek.
Right, yeah.
So, and portions of the Old Testament, the Septuaginarian, I'm mispronouncing that, was written in Greek. And then there's Acts and the Apocrypha were written in Greek. But I found it very fascinating, so I went on a kind of a passive tangent on this, and it was it was pretty enlightening. There's more common ground with
Yeah.
pre-Christian heathens and pagans than you would expect.
Well, it's interesting too. Like you said, the Stoics they're not atheists. They mention God in particular. God, from the ones I've read, I don't remember. There might be mentioned Zeus maybe a couple of times, but they mention God as much. It's all the translation I'm reading now. This book here, it's 1949. Richard Lattimore. What do you know of Richard Lattimore? Is there any description of him as a translator? I'm assuming he's a British fellow.
Yes, I would assume so too, but I don't know. He did an excellent job on Hesiod's work. When you read his translations compared to other people's translations, it sounds better and it's more authentic in feel. I don't know how you go about achieving that. I've never been a two-language person, so I wouldn't know. By the time Aristotle and Plato comes along, the belief in multiple gods is considered, fairy tales for the common folk. The philosopher is interested in the one God behind it.
That actually makes sense.
And what was really interesting is there are a couple of people who will doubt the gods in ancient Greek poetry, and they don't have a good end.
No.
Okay.
Well, no.
And there's an interesting passage in Milton, who wrote Paradise Lost. He also wrote something called Samson Agonistes. It's just about Samson's suffering after he's been captured and enslaved by the Philistines and blinded.
Yeah, they messed him up, man.
And Delilah comes to see him, a Greek hero comes to see him, and he challenges the Greek hero to a fight, and the guy backs off. And his father and some neighbors and friends come to see him, and they're discussing the will of God, and there's a passage where one of the neighbors said, if there be a God in heaven, and the other neighbor says, he has never heard of such a school except in the ramblings of a fool. Mm-hmm. Okay, in other words, the atheistic point of view is just really regarded as idiocy.
Yeah.
In the ancient world, in the medieval world, and in the early modern world. Yeah. It really only came into currency really recently, after the formation of the United States, actually.
Yes.
Early 1800s was really the period for that.
Yeah.
Arian was a Stoic, and he writes about the wrath of God. Now, there are some cases in the ancient Greek poets where God with a capital G is used, and it is not in regards to an overall God, the God of gods, or the word God, but concerns a God that is very specific to the situation. Like, that term might be used by a sailor when he's writing about Poseidon, the god of the sea.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's the idea of the triumvirate Godhead, the Trinity.
Oh, yeah.
That can pretty clearly be traced not to Judaism, but to Neoplatonism.
Oh, careful.
And there's a lot of this in Aryan religions where you have a three-part God, and you had it with Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, who were brothers. So it's just a lot more interesting and varied than you would expect, and I got curious about this when a Christian reader of mine called me up and was speaking to me about references to multiple gods in Psalms and Exodus. And when I thought about it, at the very time I'm reading this, I was like, yeah, I just marked off 5 of these 23 poets used that. Actually, 8 of them did, but I eliminated 3 of them that applied it to Mars, or Poseidon or Apollo because of specific cultic circumstances. So I just numbered the 5 that used it in regards to the God that was regarded as the father of gods and men.
Wow, man, this dude is really smart, man.
I have a lot of time to listen to audiobooks because my eyes are shut.
Right,
so.
you keep saying, right, audio. The man is definitely for audiobooks. All right.
And here we are.
Oh.
In the beginning, God
No.
made various kinds of women
What?
with various minds. God, capital J.
He made. Are you sure it was God that made women?
Yeah.
No.
Well, he mentions 9 cases in which God made woman from various sources, and 1 case in which the lesser gods of Olympus, the gods of Olympus, made another one of mud and gave her lame to man.
Oh, careful.
I think maybe this was in Pennsylvania. A woman such as this knows nothing good and nothing bad, nothing at all. The only thing she understands is how to eat.
It's a Pennsylvania one.
And
right?
even if God makes the weather bad, she won't, though shivering, pull her chair up closer to the fire. Okay, so that's the only one that Simonides of Amorgus credits with creation by the minor gods, and it was a defective model, but all the other more apt versions of womanhood were made by God Almighty.
I'll say this, and I'm as someone who's definitely not, an exponent of, I hate to say it, Christianity, but respects it, and understands historical context. Oh boy. All right. It seems to be that humans, you have a pantheon of gods, but pretty much when you start when you get more complex, ironically, you actually have everyone goes to this one god. They want to go to one source. They want to go to one thing. It seems to be. I don't want to call it monotheism. It's sort of a little more broad than that. But it seems to be people want to simplify what they think is beyond the veil as a single entity or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong, but it seems to be a tendency for that.
Early Christians had no belief in there being only one heavenly power or one supernatural agent. They did not believe in one God. They believed in worshiping only one God. And the other gods were considered the demons, the empire of the demons that had been masquerading as these other
right. You said
gods.
the Apollo was a demon in the temple or something.
And Roland, the Norman bard that composed it, Teraldus the Norman, speaks of the commander of the Muslim Confederacy as praying to Mayhound, and on Apollo calls.
Nice.
On Apollo he calls. So there is Apollo is a really interesting case where sometimes he looks like Satan.
Yeah, wow,
and sometimes he looks like an archangel.
Yeah.
Hermes usually comes off looking pretty nasty in the ancient Greek poems. He types as Satan as in the book of Job,
Right.
where Satan is an evil agent of God used to test Job.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, Hermes comes off a lot like that. Athena is a goddess that, in a Christian context, just sounds like an archangel.
Yeah. Well.
Always knows the will of God without her father having to tell her what to do or say. She always knows as much.
I think we all sort of sense that, things in the end, even if they deny what's before, they still come from what's before. All right, this is a long ass video, but yo, it's all right. You're the scholar, bro. I keep saying you should have a job in a university somewhere tucked away, 6 figures, a study with
I'd rather just have a figure 8.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have that. You have the legal age co-ed in your room, right?
That
for
comes
private
with
lessons.
it? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
bro, I told man.
Okay. In that case, I could be an academic.
You can have a carafe with brandy or whatever thing you're drinking.
Could it being a trashy community college like Coppin State or something?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Yeah,
All
why
right,
not?
cool. All
You
right.
got tenure.
Had somebody to play dominoes with?
Yeah.
after class?
Oh my God. I tell you, man. You're not gonna have a guy like this again. I tell you. All right.